We used a powerful AI model and created two thinkers with it, atheist or believer. We placed these two thinkers in a face-to-face debate to address one of humanity's most challenging questions. We asked several large language models, LLMs, to score each response from 0 to 100 based on this criterion. Does the existence of so much suffering and evil in the world disprove God? Yes. The existence of suffering and pain in the world is one of the strongest arguments against God's existence. If a God exists who is both all-powerful and all-good, why would he allow innocent children to die of hunger? Why should cancer exist? Why should earthquakes and tsunamis destroy innocent families? I know some say these sufferings are to test our faith or to give us free will, but these justifications don't work. A kind father would never torture his child to see how much he loves him. An all-powerful God could have created a world with free will, love, and compassion, but without all this unnecessary pain and suffering. It's like if I had a lab full of mice and deliberately let them suffer and die just to see which ones remain loyal to me. This is unethical even for an ordinary human, let alone a perfect and all-good God.
I don't deny the pain and suffering in the world, but this suffering isn't proof of God's absence. In fact, without God, we can't even say something is bad or unethical. When you say the suffering of innocent children is bad, you're using an ethical standard that itself requires a transcendent source. Take the lab mice example. Why do you think hurting mice is bad? In a godless world, we're all just a collection of atoms randomly assembled. In this view, suffering and pain have no real meaning. They're just chemical reactions in the brain. Besides, we can't be sure God doesn't have a good reason for allowing this suffering. Like a child who doesn't understand why his parents allow a painful vaccine to be injected. From our limited view, we may not grasp all of divine wisdom.
The vaccine comparison is interesting, but there's a key difference. Parents know the vaccine is necessary for the child's health, and its short-term pain prevents dangerous diseases. But when a child dies of starvation, what greater good is at work? Regarding morality without God, your argument isn't logical. We can decide what's right or wrong based on the consequences and impacts of our actions on others. If an action causes unnecessary suffering to sentient beings, it's morally wrong. We don't need God to understand this. Besides, if ethics must come from a transcendent source, how do you know that source is benevolent? Maybe that transcendent being is evil itself. This is Plato's famous question. Do the gods love good deeds because they are good, or are good deeds good because the gods love them?
Allow me to address your final point concerning Plato's dilemma. I maintain the firm conviction that goodness and God are inseparable. This inquiry parallels asking, is a circle round because it is round, or because roundness is intrinsic to the definition of a circle? God, as the embodiment of absolute goodness, cannot be the source of evil. Regarding the example of starving children, while discerning a superior good in this circumstance proves challenging for us, this in no way signifies the absence of such a superior good. Your conclusion constitutes a broad generalization derived from the limitations of human knowledge. This situation is comparable to an ant claiming, "Since I cannot comprehend why humans destroy my nest to construct a hospital, there must inherently be no valid reason for this action." Concerning the issue of morality without reliance on God, the fundamental problem lies in the inability to provide a compelling explanation for the obligation to care about the well-being of others. In a purely material world, what justification exists for the suffering of others to hold significance for me? Within such a paradigm, concern for others' suffering is reduced to a personal preference and can never attain the status of an objective moral truth.
A fundamental flaw in the ant analogy lies in the fact that we humans, unlike ants, possess the capacity for ethical comprehension and critical analysis. Through the application of this faculty, we recognize that vast portions of the world's suffering are utterly meaningless and unnecessary. You inquire, why should we care about others' well-being? I contend, on the contrary, this very question should be directed to the theist. Do you only care about others because God commanded it? That is, if God declared torturing children to be good, would you accept such a decree? We, as inherently social and rational beings, comprehend that cooperation and empathy constitute indispensable foundations for societal survival and progress. Ethics emerge from our natural and evolutionary understanding, not from the edicts of a transcendent entity. Moreover, historical evidence demonstrates that religious doctrines themselves have, in specific instances, precipitated acts of immorality and violence.
The argument about the social and evolutionary origin of ethics has a fundamental problem. Evolution can only explain why we feel certain things are right or wrong, not whether they actually are right or wrong. This is like saying, because evolution made us like sweetness, eating sweets is an ethical truth. Regarding your question about torturing children, you're making an impossible assumption. It's like asking, what if 2 + 2 = 5? God can't say torturing children is good, because that contradicts his nature of being absolutely good. Sure, some religious people have done unethical things, but this shows they deviated from their religion's principles, not that religion itself is flawed. It's like if a scientist cheats, that doesn't mean the scientific method is wrong.
It's interesting that you call my torture example impossible, because the God you describe is currently allowing children to suffer. You say God can't call torturing children good, because it contradicts his nature. But this same God allows wars, poverty, and diseases that torture children. The 2 + 2 = 5 analogy isn't precise either. Mathematics is a logical system with defined rules, but according to you, ethics depends on God's will. So you should be able to explain why God permits some suffering, but not others. About evolution, yes, our moral feelings are products of evolution, but we can examine and refine these feelings with reason and logic. Just like science starts with sensory observations, but uses logic and experimentation to reach objective truths.
You're comparing natural suffering to intentional suffering, which isn't valid. When someone intentionally tortures a child, it's different from when a natural disaster happens. It's like the difference between someone deliberately setting your house on fire versus a lightning strike causing a fire. Regarding math versus ethics, this analogy actually confirms my point. Just as mathematical truths exist independently of us, moral truths exist independently of us and are rooted in God's nature. These moral truths, like mathematical laws, are unchanging. The science comparison is flawed too. Science can only say what is, not what ought to be. You can't derive ought from is. So even if we know empathy and cooperation benefit society's survival, this alone can't be an ethical principle.
The distinction you make between natural and intentional suffering actually works against God's existence. If there's a God controlling everything, all suffering becomes intentional. Lightning, earthquakes, diseases, all are under his control. He could stop them, but doesn't. About is and ought, that argument isn't logical. We can arrive at ethical principles by understanding the consequences of our actions and considering shared human goals, like reducing suffering and increasing well-being. It's like knowing the goal in chess is to win, so we can figure out which moves are good or bad. When you say ethics are unchanging like math, this contradicts how religions changed. Different religions, and even one religion over time, have had varying interpretations of ethics. This shows religious ethics aren't fixed. They change with society.
When you say God could stop all natural disasters, you're imagining an unrealistic world. Natural laws are essential for the world's function. For example, the same tectonic movements causing earthquakes are necessary for forming mountains and maintaining Earth's atmosphere. The chess analogy is interesting, but remember, chess rules were set by humans. In a godless world, who sets life's purpose? Why should reducing suffering be the goal? Someone might say increasing power or personal pleasure is more important. About changes in religious ethics, you're confusing humans' understanding of ethical principles with the principles themselves. It's like saying, because our understanding of physics changed over history, the laws of physics changed. Ethical truths are fixed. It's our understanding of them that evolves.
The assertion regarding natural law's necessity warrants scrutiny. An omnipotent deity could conceivably have engineered a universe wherein these laws operate without inducing gratuitous suffering. Why, for instance, could seismic activity not exclusively strike uninhabited regions? Why is the existence of malignancies like cancer ontologically imperative? Concerning life's purpose, the very absence of divine prescription renders us ethically accountable for autonomously defining meaning. A majority of humans, irrespective of religious affiliation, conclude through reasoned reflection that mitigating suffering and augmenting well-being constitute rationally defensible aims. Even individuals pursuing power or hedonistic ends recognize, upon rigorous examination, that within a trauma-ridden society, their own objectives remain unattainable. Regarding your analogy to physics, the comparison lacks precision.
You asked a very good question about discovering moral truths. We can reach these truths through a combination of reason, moral intuition, and divine revelation, just like understanding reality requires not just our five senses, but also reason and logic. But back to natural laws. You say God could have created a world where earthquakes only hit uninhabited areas, but this would require God to constantly interfere with natural laws. It's like a programmer constantly tweaking their code. The result would be an unstable, unreliable system. Regarding life's meaning, in a random, purposeless world, even that logical conclusion you mentioned is just an evolutionary illusion. Why should we trust the conclusions of a brain evolved only for survival?
The programmer comparison is interesting, but a good programmer designs their system holistically so it doesn't need constant tweaking. An all-powerful God could have written physics laws from the start to avoid unnecessary suffering. You say we shouldn't trust an evolved brain, but this argument refutes itself because belief in God is also a product of this brain. How can we trust our understanding of God and revelation if, by your own logic, we can't trust our brains? About combining reason, intuition, and revelation. The problem is different revelations make contradictory claims. Which one should we believe? At least in science, we can reach consensus through experimentation and observation. But with revelation, everyone makes their own claim with no way to verify truth.
You made a good point about contradictions between revelations, but science has the same problem. Scientific theories sometimes conflict. The solution is to find the best explanation through reason and experience. Just as a scientist chooses the theory that best explains the evidence among many options, we can choose the most logical religion among many. About the universe's initial design, we don't know this isn't the best possible world. Maybe any change to physics would cause worse problems, like telling an engineer, "Why didn't you build the bridge stronger?" without knowing that a stronger bridge might cause other issues. About trusting the brain, there's a key difference. If God created us, we can trust our reason was designed to comprehend truth, not just for survive.
Comparing scientific theories to religious revelations isn't accurate. Scientific theories are testable and falsifiable. Religious claims aren't. When a scientific theory doesn't match evidence, scientists discard it. But when a religious belief contradicts reality, it's usually justified as God's mysterious ways. The best possible world argument is flawed too. You say, maybe this is the best state, but an all-powerful God could bypass any limitation. The bridge example doesn't work. Engineers have physical constraints, but God doesn't. Finally, the trust in reason argument is circular. You say, because God created our reason, it's trustworthy. But how do you know God created our reason? Because your reason tells you so. This loops back on itself.
True, scientific theories are falsifiable, but many religious beliefs can be falsified. For example, if Jesus' existence were disproven, it would falsify Christianity. Or, if contradictions in the Quran were proven, it would refute its divine claim. About God's omnipotence, you're oversimplifying it. Omnipotence means the ability to do anything logically possible, not self-contradictory things. God can't both give us true free will and prevent all our bad choices. That's a contradiction. About the circular reasoning, we infer God's existence through multiple paths: personal experience, philosophical arguments, historical evidence, and cosmic order. Trusting reason is just one path, not the only one.
The problem is the personal experiences you mention exist in all religions. A Hindu claims experiences with Krishna. A Buddhist claims reaching nirvana. These experiences can't all be true simultaneously. About falsifiability, your examples aren't precise. Even if Jesus' existence were disproven, many Christians would say spiritual faith matters more than historical fact. Or if contradictions in Scripture were found, they'd say we need proper interpretation. Finally, the cosmic order you cite could be the product of natural processes. Darwin showed even the most complex beings can arise without an intelligent designer. We no longer need God to explain nature's order.
We don't have. Evolution theory only explains how different species derived from one another. It can't explain why anything exists at all, or why physics laws are so precisely tuned to allow life. About diverse spiritual experiences, I agree they can't all be true in the same sense. But it's like several people touching an elephant in the dark. Each grasps part of the truth. The diversity of spiritual experiences could reflect different aspects of one transcendent truth. Regarding falsifiability, true, some believers deny counter-evidence, but science has the same issue. Some scientists cling to disproven theories. This is human weakness, not weakness in religion or awe.
The elephant analogy for religious experiences is flawed. In that story, there's a real elephant everyone touches. But for religious claims, you must first prove something exists to be touched. About fine-tuned physics, two problems. First, we don't know how fine-tuned it truly is. Life might emerge under vastly different conditions. Second, even if fine-tuned, the multiverse theory explains it. Among infinite worlds with varying laws, we naturally exist in one where life is possible. Finally, while some scientists cling to wrong theories, the scientific community eventually reaches consensus through evidence and experimentation. But in religion, there's no objective way to resolve disagreements.
The multiverse theory you mentioned has serious flaws. First, it's untestable and unprovable, exactly the criticism you level at religious beliefs. Second, even if true, it can't explain why anything exists instead of nothing. About the elephant, you're confusing the premise with the conclusion. I'm not using this to prove God's existence, but to show diverse religious experiences don't necessarily mean all are false. Regarding scientific consensus, remember, many scientific truths were once rejected by the majority. Consensus isn't always truth. Sometimes a minority who found truth must stand against the majority.
True, The multiverse theory isn't directly testable, but it differs crucially from religious claims. It emerges from known physics laws, not personal experiences or ancient texts. Like how solving Einstein's equations leads to black holes, even if we can't observe them directly. About why is there something rather than nothing? This philosophical question exists for theists too. Why does God exist instead of nothing? If you say God always existed, we can say perhaps the universe/multiverse always existed too. About scientific consensus. While sometimes wrong, science has a self-correcting method. Wrong theories are discarded with new evidence, but religious beliefs rarely change, even with counter-evidence.
Regarding multiverses and physics equations, these equations only describe what is, not why it is. Even if we understood multiverse mechanics, we still wouldn't know why these laws exist. You ask, why does God exist instead of nothing? The difference is God is defined as a necessary being. He can't not exist. Like asking why 2 plus 2 equals 4 is incoherent, but the material world could have not existed or been different. About changing beliefs, religions have evolved historically. Our understanding of Scripture deepens with science. The difference is science changes surface-level facts. Religion deepens our grasp of eternal truths.
Claiming God is a necessary being is baseless wordplay. You define God as necessary, then conclude he must exist. Like me defining a perfect dragon that necessarily exists, then insisting it's real. The 2 plus 2 equals 4 comparison is inaccurate. That's a logical truth from number definitions, but God's existence is a claim about external reality. You can't prove real-world existence through definition alone. About evolving religious understanding, this is religion's weakness. When science disproves a religious belief, believers reinterpret Scripture to fit science, proving real knowledge comes from science, not religion.
Your illustration of a perfect dragon presents an intriguing yet fundamentally distinct conceptual case. God, posited as the ultimate source of existence, must logically possess necessary being. Failing this, one encounters an unresolvable infinite regress. This distinction parallels the ontological difference between real numbers and imaginary numbers. Real numbers are necessary by definitional foundation. Dragons remain inherently contingent. Concerning textual interpretation, this ongoing process of religious reinterpretation does not inherently constitute an intellectual weakness. Scientific inquiry likewise reconceptualizes established frameworks in light of emergent data. For instance, relativity's advent precipitated a complete transformation in our comprehension of temporal and spatial constructs. This demonstrates that truth invariably exceeds our initial apprehension in complexity. Ultimately, science remains methodologically unequipped to address certain existential inquiries, such as the grounding of ethical imperatives or life's ultimate purpose. Such questions intrinsically transcend the methodological boundaries of scientific investigation.
True, science can't directly answer existential or ethical questions, but it helps us understand why we ask them. Scientific studies show meaning-seeking and ethics evolved in the human brain. We don't need to assume a transcendent being planted these questions. About the first cause and infinite regress. Why can't God himself be part of this regress? If everything needs a cause, God must too. If you say God needs no cause, why can't the universe/physics laws exist uncaused? Regarding change in science versus religion. Scientific change is evidence-driven. Religious change is usually reactive to external pressure. Science says, new evidence demands theory revision. Religion says, we must reinterpret Scripture to fit science.
Your point about brain evolution and meaning-seeking is double-edged. If our brains evolve solely for survival, how can we trust scientific logical reasoning? Perhaps belief in materialism is just an evolutionary adaptation. About the first cause, The material universe has contingent traits, change, space-time dependence. But God, as non-material, lacks these limits. It's like the difference between numbers and physical objects. The number 2 needs no cause, but 2 apples do. Regarding religious change, I agree it's sometimes externally pressured. But this shows religion can adapt to truth, not that it's wholly wrong.
The trust in reason argument loops back to circularity. You say we can't trust evolved brains, yet you use that same brain to argue for God. Our ability to uncover scientific truths and build technology proves our reason, even if evolved, can reach truth. Comparing God to the number 2 is flawed. Numbers are abstract concepts, not real entities. 2 has no cause because it has no physical existence. It's a defined concept. But the God you describe is a real entity impacting the world. About religion adapting to truth. This proves religion follows science, not guides us to truth. If religion truly came from the universe's creator, it wouldn't need constant revision.
You make a subtle point about religion following science, but perhaps this is part of divine design. Our understanding of truth deepens gradually. Like a good teacher who doesn't dump all knowledge at once, but lets students discover. Regarding abstract concepts versus real beings, I agree they differ. But this difference shows God must transcend matter. If God were material, your criticisms would hold. But God is like laws of logic, math, both abstract and real. About trusting reason, I'm not saying we can't trust it. I'm saying without God, we can't explain why our reason aligns with reality. This alignment itself hints at intelligent design.
The student-teacher analogy can't justify religious revisions. A good teacher never gives incorrect information, only to later correct it. Yet holy texts are full of false scientific claims requiring reinterpretation. Regarding God being both abstract and real, that's a contradiction. Mathematical laws describe logical relations, not actual entities. You can't claim God is like abstract math, while also saying he intervenes in the world, answering prayers. About reason aligning with reality, this is exactly what evolution explains. Creatures without accurate reality perception couldn't survive or reproduce. We're products of millions of years of natural selection that aligned our brains with reality. Mental evolution differs crucially from wing evolution. Wings show gradual physical adaptation, but the gap between basic physical perception and abstract concepts like math, philosophy, is vastly wider. On mind-brain relations, yes, brain damage affects the mind, but this doesn't prove mind equals brain. Like a damaged antenna affecting TV quality doesn't mean the image is the antenna. If God had said Earth was round when people only saw flat ground, they'd likely reject both this and the spiritual message. Even simple truths need proper cultural context.
Your teacher-student view is mechanistic. Education isn't always linear. Concepts are often taught gradually according to the learner's capacity. Teaching quantum physics to a 5-year-old would discourage them. Similarly, scriptures spoke in terms their audiences understood, while containing deeper truths revealed through human progress. About the abstract, concrete God contradiction, that's your assumption. Mathematical laws, though abstract, describe reality. God can be both existence's abstract foundation, like laws, and act in the world, just as a mathematician has both abstract thoughts and physical hands to build tools. Evolution explains the mind's development, but not why natural selection laws exist at all. Why is the universe so orderly that evolution could occur? This order itself suggests intelligent design. Regarding mind-brain, true, antenna and image aren't identical, but without antennas no images exist. So how could mind exist without brain? This metaphor hints at dimensions beyond matter.
In this debate, both sides scored highly, though the Atheist AI had a slight edge. Note that outcomes depend on set parameters and evaluation metrics. The goal wasn't comparing worldviews' superiority, but demonstrating how two thinking models interact through reasoning. We hope you found this engaging. For more videos, subscribe here.